Welcome back to the Fanboy Cantina. In this video, this is our non-spoiler review of The Batman. Currently available only in theaters, The Batman stars Robert Pattinson in the title role, along with Zoe Kravitz as Selina Kyle, Jeffrey Wright as Lieutenant James Gordon, Colin Farrell as the Penguin, and Paul Dano as the Riddler. From IMDb, when the Riddler, a sadistic serial killer, begins murdering key political figures in Gotham, Batman is forced to investigate the city's hidden corruption and question his family's involvement. Matt Reeves is the director and co-writer of The Batman. The Batman is rated PG-13 for strong, violent, and disturbing content, drug content, strong language, and some suggestive material. The Batman is 2 hours and 56 minutes long. So far, The Batman is doing very well at the box office, on track to hit $128 million in its opening weekend. Now in this review, we're going to try to stay as spoiler-free as possible, but if you want to know absolutely nothing, just pause this video and come back at a later time. The Batman is the latest take on the iconic DC character, and as my son reminded me, DC stands for Detective Comics. Of all the incarnations of Batman that we've seen, this one is the most faithful to rendering the Batman as the world's greatest detective. It is truly a graphic novel brought to film here. Right from the beginning, you're going to realize that this is going to be a detective story rather than a superhero story. So if you're looking for the Batman from Justice League or something like that, you're not going to find him in this movie. This movie has more in common with Seven, Zodiac, or even the Joker. And in fact, at one point, I began to wonder if I was even watching a superhero movie. Maybe I'm just watching a dark, gritty crime drama where one of the detectives just happens to be a guy in a bat suit. If you're a parent, I recommend seeing this movie ahead of time, especially if you have young kids. Even though there are Lego toys and action figures geared towards kids, this movie is very true to its PG-13 rating, to the point where I wondered if it was an R. Scenes can be especially dark, disturbing, and intense, particularly as the Riddler unleashes his brutal plan. Additionally, even if you're able to get comfortable with this content for your family, it is a 3-hour movie. Unlike other incarnations of this character, the Batman picks up on an early version, year 2 of the Batman appearing in Gotham City, and that's a great take that we haven't seen before, where Gotham and the police department are still adjusting to what it means for the Batman to be here. In fact, all of the characters are early versions of themselves. Jim Gordon isn't commissioner yet. I don't think Selina Kyle is ever referred to as the Catwoman, except for a reference to, a bunch of cats being in her apartment. The Penguin is an established, notorious figure, though short of being that supervillain that we might expect. So it's a unique period, unique take on these characters. And by the end of the movie, we can see the Batman and his arc and growth as a character. I was very impressed by the take on the Riddler. When you think Riddler, you think Frank Gorshin or Jim Carrey, a comical figure. Paul Dano's Riddler is exceptionally dark, a serial killer with a dark sense of humor. Performances are strong across the board. I really liked Robert Pattinson and his take on the Batman. Zoe Kravitz is stellar as Selina Kyle. Colin Farrell does an amazing job as the Penguin, channeling a little bit of Robert De Niro under all that heavy makeup. While the movie is very dark, there are many memorable scenes that are just amazing to look at. Certain moments feel like they are taken straight from a graphic novel and brought to film. On the downside, the movie is extraordinarily long at nearly 3 hours in length. 3 hours. That doesn't need to be a deal breaker, but the movie does feel its length. Certain scenes feel very slow, methodically telling the story, just as Batman is methodically capturing and assessing each clue. But in contrast to the amount of action you see in the trailer, there's a lot of scenes of dialogue, staring at people, more dialogue, which is not necessarily a problem. It's just different than what you might expect from the trailers. Some scenes definitely could have been tightened, and I even wonder wonder if the final act was truly necessary. Though it would have been different, I wondered if this story or type of story could have been handled as a 2 or 3 or 4 episode series. I think what compounds the length of the movie is the score. I love Michael Giacchino's work, but here the Batman's theme is this repetitive dun 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 over and over again. And unlike other character themes like the Avengers theme or Ray's theme or whatever else, this just feels like the same 4 beats over and over again while Batman stares down yet another person. It didn't take long for me to get really tired of it. One thing to mention, there's not really an end credit scene, and there's something that appears at the end, but it's very short. Now, I support sticking around through the credits to appreciate the people who worked on the film, but if you're worried about hitting the bathroom before hitting the parking lot, I think you can just view an article that has what the end credit is. Overall, The Batman is a very good movie. I love the unique approach to Batman with a heavy focus on a detective story. It genuinely feels like a graphic novel, a noir Batman story brought to film, and the performances are excellent. It's just that it moves too slowly, and that's what I'm saying about measures that could have made the story a bit tighter, or at this pace, maybe to break it up so that you could savor it. Anyways, we want to hear from you. Post in the comments, what do you think of The Batman? As always, thank you so much for watching. Please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. This has been the Fanboy Cantina.